The eviction notice was folded 3 times in her scrub pocket. She smoothed it flat against her thigh before walking into room 417. My loves, I have worked 18 years in a hotel where men with tattoos like his rented the presidential suite in cash. I know this kind of silence when I see it. And what I am about to tell you tonight, it still turns my stomach and warms my chest at the same time. Nia Holloway, 30 years old, registered nurse on the ghost wing of Bronx General, the wing they send the patients nobody wants to remember. 2 weeks behind on rent. A 5-year-old daughter named Lila hidden in a broken break room with a teddy bear backpack and a picture book about a koi fish. Room 417 held a man with no name, a file that only said JD VIP 0714. Locked-in syndrome, do not resuscitate. Do not intervene. Then, at 0314, she adjusted his hospital gown collar, and she saw the black koi tattoo running down the left side of his neck. Yu Min Jae, the silent koi, boss of the Baeko Pa, a man Manhattan had already buried. He could hear every word she said. He could not move a single muscle to answer her. And every night, a little girl in a butter-yellow dress climbed onto the chair beside his bed and read to him. But what happened the night the lights cut out on the 4th floor? Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. Nia Holloway tucked the eviction notice deeper into the pocket of her navy scrubs before she pushed the service door open with her hip. The paper was folded into thirds, then into thirds again, until it felt more like a coin than a letter. She kept her hand on it as she walked. 2307 glowed on the wall clock above the freight elevator, and the fluorescent tube 2 panels down had been dying for a week. It flickered once as she passed. She did not look up. The ghost wing of Bronx General had a smell all its own. Bleach on top, something older underneath. Nia had learned, in her first month on the 4th floor, to breathe through her mouth for the first 3 minutes of every shift, and by the 4th minute she stopped noticing. She was already at minute 5 by the time she reached the disused staff break room at the end of the north corridor. She knocked twice with a knuckle, a pause, then once more, softer, like a question. Baby, it's mommy. The door opened 3 inches. A round, warm brown face lifted itself into the crack of light. One enormous puff of curls, held up by a butter-yellow band. Lila was still holding the storybook against her chest like a shield, the brown teddy backpack half slung off one shoulder. You said an hour, the child whispered. I said maybe an hour. I got tied up at handoff. Nia slid inside and closed the door behind her, back pressed against it for a second. The room had one working lamp, a folded blanket on a vinyl couch, a paper bag of grapes she had washed at home, and a coloring book with the crayons lined up in a row by shade. Lila lined them up herself. She always did. Mrs. Marion say the ice machine broke again? Lila asked, because she remembered every piece of gossip Nia had ever brought home. She did. Nia crouched, palmed the small back, felt the ribs under the peach cardigan. You eat all the crackers? Half. Eat the other half. I'll come check on you at 1. If somebody knocks, you stay under the desk. You don't come out. You don't call for me. What do you do? Stay under the desk. Don't come out. Don't call. That's my girl. Lila lifted the storybook and held it up like an offering. The cover was creased along the spine from being read too many times in 1 week. A koi carp swam up a waterfall in blue ink under the title, The Koi Who Swam Upstream. It was the only book Lila had asked for by name, and Nia had bought it second-hand from a woman selling Korean picture books out of a folding table on Fordham Road. Read 1 page, Lila asked. Not 1 page, 1 line. 1 line. Nia sat on the edge of the vinyl couch. Lila climbed into her lap the way she always did, folding herself in like a letter into an envelope. Nia opened the book to the dog-eared middle. The koi swam against the current, because the current was the only thing that would ever teach him how strong he was. That's more than one line. Sentences don't count, only lines. Read the ceiling now. You always say that. Because ceilings tell better stories than books when nobody's watching. Lila laughed once, a small, warm sound Nia caught and swallowed before it could get out into the corridor. Then she was up, sliding the child back onto the couch, tucking the blanket to the small waist. "I'll be back at 1, my life." At 1. Nia pressed her forehead against Lila's for the count of 2, no longer, because 2 was all she could afford without breaking something inside her chest. Then she was up and out, and the door was clicking shut, and the corridor was empty again. She turned the corner, and Rebecca Alden was already there. The supervisor had a way of appearing that made you check your own pockets. She was standing with her tablet held flat against her collarbone, reading glasses on the chain resting against a light gray blouse, her ash-blonde ponytail pulled so tight it lifted the skin at her temples 0.5 millimeter. She looked at Nia the way an accountant looks at a receipt. "Holloway, Miss Alden, you came up the service stairs." "I always come up the service stairs. Elevators slow after 11. You came up the service stairs at 23:03. Your shift starts at 23. Rebecca tapped one nail on the tablet. "I timed it, 3 minutes. I clocked in downstairs. I can pull the swipe." "I'm sure you can." A small, tight smile that did not travel any higher than the vertical crease above her upper lip. "We had a conversation last month, Holloway, about focus. About the 4th floor being a very quiet floor. Very quiet. I don't like surprises on my quiet floor. We understand each other." "Yes, ma'am. Room 417 is yours tonight. Charts on the door. No family, no visitors, no orders, except comfort. He is not to be moved. He is not to be spoken to as if he can hear you. He is not to be touched except for the strictly clinical. We are keeping him alive because someone is paying for the bed. That's the whole of it. Understood. And, Holloway." Rebecca leaned in 1/2 inch, no more. "If I find one thing on this floor that does not belong on this floor, we will have a very different kind of conversation." The blouse smelled like laundered starch and faintly, cold coffee. Nia counted 3 breaths before she nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Rebecca turned and clicked away down the corridor in her black pointed flats. The click of those flats had a Doppler to it. It kept going long after she was gone. Nia let herself lean against the wall for exactly 1 second. She pressed the folded eviction into the pocket seam until her thumbnail whitened. 48 hours had been the number on the phone the day before. 48 hours to vacate. She had a second job interview in 7 days. 7 minus 2 was 5. She could not do the math past that. She stopped trying and pushed off the wall. Marion Whitaker was at the nurse's station, rebuilding a chart cart, sleeves pushed up, the small gold crucifix at her collar catching the overhead light every time she reached. She glanced up at Nia and said nothing with her mouth. She said everything with her eyebrows. "I know," Nia murmured, sliding behind the counter. "I said nothing," Marion said. "You said it with your face. My face is between me and the Lord." Nia almost smiled. Almost. She pulled up the assignment board on the monitor and scrolled to room 417. The line read, JD VIP 0714. Locked-in syndrome. No family listed. No emergency contact. Payer. Private. Confidential. Orders. Comfort only. Do not resuscitate. Withdraw discussion pending. Attending. Dr. W. Cranston. She read the code twice. JD VIP 0714. It looked like a warehouse tag. She had been on this floor 8 months, and she had never seen a chart that wasn't a name. Even the John Does were John Does. This one was a lot number. "That one," Marion said, without looking. Been here longer than my last 2 grandbabies been born. Nobody come, nobody call. Cranston sign off every Wednesday like he check in a mailbox. Alden don't want none of us in there more than we need. Why? Baby, when they don't want you in a room, you already know why. Somebody in there they don't want seen. Nia said nothing. She grabbed the vitals sheet, the pen light, the little cup with 2 disposable swabs, and slid the chart back into the rack. The cartwheel squeaked as she turned it toward the corridor. She oiled that wheel 3 weeks running, and it kept coming back. Room 417 was the 3rd door on the left. She stopped at the threshold and did what she always did before entering a room. 2 breaths in through the nose, 1 out through the mouth, hand flat on the door for a second, so she was going in as a person and not as a task. Then she pushed the door open. The room was dim. The overhead was off. Only the wall sconce and the blue glow of the cardiac monitor kept the shapes visible. A man lay on the bed, tall enough that his feet came close to the footboard. The light gray gown was tied at the back, a thin white sheet pulled up to his waist. On his right index finger, a pulse oximeter clip glowed red. On his left hand, an IV taped down clean. Blue wires ran from the chest, under the gown, out to the monitor. A discreet nasogastric tube ran from his nose, down under his jaw, and away. Even at rest, the shoulders were wide. The chest rose and fell in the slow, measured way of someone who was being kept breathing by his own body and nothing else. His face was turned 3/4 toward the ceiling. There were dark bruises fading along the jaw and the left temple, a white bandage across the brow, deep cuts stitched under the bandage, half-healed. Someone had shaved him 3 or 4 days ago, and the black hair was cut in a side-swept undercut that had grown out a little. His eyes were closed. Nia clicked the door shut behind her. "Evening," she said, keeping her voice at the level she used with Lila when Lila was sick. "It's Nia. I'm going to take your temperature and check your lines. If any of that is uncomfortable, I'm sorry in advance." She wheeled the cart to the right side of the bed. She said none of this because she thought he could hear her. She said it because Rebecca had told her not to. The wristband on his left arm was plastic and white and read JDVIP 0714 in block print. She turned it a quarter turn to get the barcode toward the light, scanned it with the handheld, and the machine chirped. The temperature strip was already on his forehead under the bandage. She noted the number. She swapped out the near-empty saline. She checked the pressure line, the catheter bag, the depth of the NG tube against the mark she'd inked on her own log the night before. Everything held. She saved the chart for last. Comfort only. Withdraw discussion pending. Attending signature, W. Cranston, MD. Below that, in smaller print, a line she had not seen before. Case review scheduled. Family services notified per protocol despite absence of listed kin. She frowned at that and moved on. At the end of the round, she came back around the bed to check the pillow. He had slid down 1/2 an inch during the last shift, and the tube was pulling at his cheek. She slipped both hands under his shoulders. He was heavy in the deadened way people got when their bodies were doing nothing to help, and eased him up 2 inches toward the headboard. His head tilted a fraction to the right as she set him down. The gown gaped at the collar. She reached to smooth it. Her fingers found the fabric. She lifted it back into place. She stopped. She lifted the fabric again, slower. The overhead was off. The wall sconce threw yellow. She had to lean until her braid brushed his shoulder to see clearly. Along the left side of his neck, starting under the ear, and running down toward the collarbone, disappearing under the gown, a tattoo. Traditional black work. A single koi carp, swimming upward, scales cleanly outlined, a whisker curling back along the jawline like water shaped it. She felt her hand go cold before her mind explained why. She had seen that koi before, not in person, in the newspaper, on a Sunday, 6 months earlier, when she had spread the free daily out on the break room table because she liked the crossword. There had been a photograph, grainy, taken with a long lens, of a man walking into a black car outside a restaurant in Koreatown. Half his face was cut off by the door. What you could see was the left side of his neck, and a koi. The headline, she could still see it. Baeko Pa, boss missing, presumed dead in Manhattan waterfront shootout. A shorter deck under it. Yoo Min-jae, 34, vanished. The koi in the photograph had the same curl at the whisker. Nia stood without moving. Her hand was still on the collar of the gown. She did not lift it away. She lowered it, very slowly, until the fabric covered the neck again. She stepped back 1 step from the bed. She reset the sheet at his waist. She wheeled the cart around to the door. She did none of this fast. She did all of it in the same rhythm she had used before she saw. At the door she paused, hand on the handle, and turned back to look at him. The man on the bed. Not the chart. Not the code. The man. He was a man someone had beaten with intent. Someone had taken time on him. Someone had cut him, and then set him where nobody would ever ask his name. The room was quiet because it had been made quiet. Marion had been right. When they don't want you in a room, you already know why. Nia looked at the wristband. JDVIP 0714. She read the numbers again. Something moved at the back of her mind. She would come back to it. Not now. I'll be back in an hour, she said, at Lila sick volume. Same voice, same hands. Nothing changes. She stepped out. The door clicked. The corridor was still empty. She walked back to the station and stood behind the counter for a full 10 seconds before she trusted her fingers on the keyboard. Marion looked up. You all right, sugar? I'm fine. You look like a woman who just saw a ghost. I said, I'm fine. Marion held her eye a beat longer than was comfortable, then went back to her chart cart. All right. Nia typed the vitals in. Nothing out of range, nothing to report. She entered comfort measures completed and moved on. She did not touch the search bar. She did not open a browser. She did not do anything that left a footprint. Rebecca Alden's tablet had a way of appearing that made you check your own pockets, and Rebecca Alden's audit trail had a way of surfacing things later. At 0042, she did rounds on rooms 411 and 414. Both stable, both silent. The ghost wing was earning its name tonight. At 0115, she walked to the break room where Lila had folded herself under the desk with the blanket, storybook flat on her chest, one small warm brown hand curled around the corner of the page. Nia watched the rise and fall of the little rib cage for a minute, and then eased the blanket up. At 0200, Marion brought her a lukewarm coffee and set it down without a word. She stood there a beat longer than was necessary, thumb rubbing the rim of the mug, and finally spoke without looking. Alden pulled the schedule up at handoff. She was reading it in the little way. You know the way. I know the way. She got her eye on you tonight, sugar. Whatever you doin', do it small. I'm not doing anything. That's what worries me. Marion turned and went back to the cart. Her thick-soled sneakers made almost no sound on the linoleum. The gold crucifix at her collar caught the light once and was gone. Nia lifted the coffee. It was the wrong side of warm. She drank it anyway, because coffee at 2 in the morning was less about coffee than about the ritual of pretending you were choosing to be awake. She pulled up the payer field on the assignment board one more time. Private. Confidential. There was a routing code beside it she had never bothered to decode. 6 letters and a dash. Now she looked at it, and the letters did not resolve into any hospital account she recognized. She closed the tab. At 0220, a maintenance call came in for a leaking pipe on 3, and Rebecca clicked past the station twice, tablet up, without stopping. On the second pass, her eyes cut sideways toward room 417 for a second, and did not stop there either. Nia kept typing. Her fingers did not slow. Her breathing did not change. She had learned as a girl how to be still under a woman's watching, and the muscle was still there. At 03:14, Nia was back in room 417. She did the same round in the same order. She scanned the wristband. She noted the temperature. She swapped the saline for the second time. She checked the NG tube. She turned him a quarter, because the protocol said turn every 2 hours to prevent pressure sores, and she meant to keep the protocol, whether anyone had ordered comfort only or not. When she settled him back, she leaned close, and this time she did what she had not done before. She put her mouth an inch from his ear. "I know who you are," she said, so soft it was hardly a shape in the air. "I don't know what happened to you. I don't want to know. I'm going to keep coming in here. I'm going to keep turning you. I'm going to keep talking to you like you can hear me. Whoever put you in this bed can be angry at me for that. I don't care." She waited. Nothing on the monitor changed. The line held. The oxygen held. She straightened. She smoothed the collar of the gown until it covered the koi. She patted his left hand, the one with the IV, once, the way she patted Lila's when the shot was over. "Rest, Mr. Yu," she whispered. "You are safe on my shift." She wheeled the cart out. She did not look at Marian when she passed the station. She went straight to the break room and knelt in front of the desk and touched Lila's ankle through the blanket to feel the warmth of it, once. Then she went back to work. At 03:47, she was signing off a med sheet at the counter when the wristband number surfaced in her mind again. JD VIP 0714. The last 4 digits, sitting there. 0714. July 14. She looked at it for a second in the reflection of the dark monitor and thought, that is a birthday. Someone made that a birthday. Somebody in this hospital, or somebody paying for this bed, put a date on this man, because a date was a way of saying he still existed. She did not know yet whose date. She would learn. She capped the pen. She walked the length of the corridor, past 411, past 414, past the closed door of 417, and let her palm brush the wood of it once without slowing. It was a small gesture. It was the whole of her promise. She turned at the end of the hall and walked back. At the break room door she knocked twice, then softly once, and let herself in. Layla had shifted onto her side. The storybook had slid off her chest and lay open at the page with the koi cresting the falls. Nia knelt, closed the book, tucked it under the child's cheek where a pillow should have been, and pressed the peach cardigan tighter across the small shoulders. She stayed there a full breath longer than she meant to. Then she stood and let herself back into the corridor. Under the wall clock in room 417, the man on the bed lay in the same position, in the same gown, in the same dim light. His eyes were closed. His chest rose and fell. On the left side of his neck, hidden again by cotton, the black koi swam upward toward an ear that had, for the first time in 11 weeks, heard a woman say his name. Tuesday came in slow, the way winter mornings do in a hospital that runs 3 shifts and forgets which one is which. Nia clocked out at 7, walked past Rebecca Alden without lifting her eyes, and rode the train home with Layla's small hand hot inside her own. She fed the girl cereal at a kitchen table she was not sure would still be hers by the weekend. She washed the scrub top in the sink because the laundromat wanted $4 she did not have. She slept 2 hours on the couch with her arm curled around her daughter. Then she got up and did the whole day over again. By Wednesday night she was back in the corridor. The eviction envelope had migrated from her pocket to the inside lining of her lunch bag, the way a woman hides a thing from herself when she cannot yet bear to look at it. Marian met her at the station with a paper cup of coffee and a sideways glance that meant Alden was already prowling the West Wing. Nia lifted the cup in silence, drank, and went to work. 417 was as she had left it. The wires the same blue. The bracelet still reading JD VIP 0714. The koi still hidden under cotton. She logged vitals. She turned him. She did not say his name that first round. She said nothing at all. There was a discipline in that silence. She was training herself to move around him like any other patient, so that if Alden ever walked in behind her, no muscle in her face would give her away. She said his name on the second round, at 3:14, because a promise made was a promise kept. Rest, Mr. Yu. Still your shift. Inside the body on the bed, a small red light came on and stayed on. He had not been sure, the first time, whether he had dreamed her. He was sure now. The voice returned on schedule, twice a shift, the soft hand at his collar, the slight upward lift when she thought he had slipped down the pillow. His world had shrunk to a rectangle of ceiling tile, with 3 water stains, shaped like the coast of a country he did not recognize, and now it also contained her. On Friday, she brought Lila. She did not plan it. She had been planning the opposite. A neighbor 2 doors down had said yes on Wednesday, no on Thursday, and finally shut the door on Friday afternoon without opening it. The sitter Nia paid in cash was ill. The one who took a bag of groceries instead of cash had a grandson home from Rikers. The list had run out, so Nia zipped the little brown teddy backpack, put the storybook inside, and rode the 4 train back to the Bronx with her daughter dozing against her ribs. The staff elevator ate them at 10:50. She parked Lila in the disused break room the way she always did. Then she stood at the threshold, one hand still on the doorknob, and made a decision that would haunt her and save her both. "Baby, listen. There's a man on this hall. He is very sick. He cannot move and he cannot speak, but I think he can hear." Lila blinked up at her, solemn as a small judge. "You want to help Mommy?" The girl nodded. "You take your book." You read to him. Quiet voice, reading voice. Same voice you use for the fish. For the koi? For the koi. At 2 in the morning, Nia carried her down the corridor herself, one arm under the small warm body, the storybook pressed against her hip. The ghost wing lights buzzed and did not care. She pushed open 417 with her shoulder and set Lila in the visitor chair like a person setting down a lit candle in a room full of paper. "Whisper voice," Nia said. "Only when I'm at the door watching." Lila opened the book. Once upon a time, there was a koi who was tired of the pond. The man on the bed did not stir. Of course he did not stir. But something inside his chest, somewhere under the sheet and the tape, and the 12 months of accumulated wrongness, tilted a quarter turn toward the small voice. He wanted to see the top of the waterfall. Everyone said, "Silly koi, koi do not swim up. Koi swim where the water goes." But this koi, she stopped. She looked up at the man's face, at the closed eyes, at the bruise along the jaw that was fading now, from purple to the color of bad tea. She leaned closer to the pillow, the way a child leans toward a shell to hear the sea. "Are you the sleeping dragon?" she asked. Nia's breath caught in the doorway. Lila did not wait for permission. "Mommy says you can hear. I think you are a sleeping dragon." In the story, the koi swims and swims and swims, and at the top he becomes a dragon. So maybe you were a koi first, and now you are just sleeping. She patted his left hand with 2 small fingers, once, the way you pat something you have decided to be responsible for. "I'll come back tomorrow, Mr. Sleeping Dragon." She came back the next night, and the night after, and the one after that. 2 weeks, 14 readings of the same book with the same voice, hitting the same words, in the same soft places. She learned to move around the wires. She learned that the machine that beeped in the corner was not a bad thing beeping, it was a good thing counting. She named the IV stand Mr. Silver. She discovered that if she put her ear against the sheet at the level of his ribs, she could hear his heart, and she reported this finding to her mother as if she had located a rare bird. For Human J, the small voice became a lever. He was a man who had once ordered a warehouse cleared in 11 minutes and who now could not close his own hand around a spoon. Grief had a season, and then it stopped being grief and became something worse. the arithmetic of a body that did not answer. In 11 weeks, he had counted every ceiling tile 11 times. He had rehearsed his own funeral 3 ways. He had stopped, at some point around the 5th week, believing that anyone outside the room remembered his name. Then a woman said his name at 3 in the morning. Then a child called him a dragon. Then the child kept coming back. Somewhere in the wiring behind his forehead, a switch that had been welded shut began, very slowly, to sweat. Down the hall on the 4th floor south side, in the bathroom nearest the service elevator, another thing was happening. The cistern behind the last stall was old porcelain, a Kohler from the 80s, that no maintenance ledger remembered. On the Monday of the 2nd week, Nia had gone in at 4 in the morning to splash water on her face and had heard something shift when she flushed. She had lifted the tank lid with 2 fingers, the way a nurse lifts anything she does not want to be caught touching, and had seen the plastic bag taped to the underside of the porcelain, vacuum-sealed, bank-strapped hundreds, a folded card the size of a subway pass with no writing on either side except a single pen mark shaped like a fish. She had put the lid back down without breathing. She had walked out of the stall as if she had done nothing more than wash her hands. She had not touched the bag. She had not touched it the 2nd week either, when there was a new one. She could count. She could see what the number would have paid. 2 months of rent. The eviction notice erased. Lila's school clothes for the year. A dentist. A coat. She could see all of that as she leaned over the sink and let cold water run over the inside of her wrists to steady the pulse. And she had walked out both times with her hands empty. Because Nia Holloway had grown up in a building where money that appeared in a bathroom did not appear alone. It always brought a man behind it, sooner or later, to ask what you had done with it. And she had already been asked to do a thing she had not agreed to. She was reading a book to a mafia boss at 2 in the morning. That was enough. Park Jumpyo watched the cistern the way a boy watches a trap he has set for a rabbit he half hopes will not come. He had been leaving the envelopes for 8 weeks, since the first Sunday he had confirmed, by tapping into the hospital's private pay routing code from a laptop at a Queen's PC Bang, that the man in 417 was not a corpse. He had rotated bathrooms, he had varied the times. He had watched the RN roster and picked the one nurse whose badge showed up in the 4117 chart most consistently, and whose schedule matched the times the envelopes went untouched. He was not offering her a bribe, he was offering her a hand. A boss without a soldier was a dead boss, and a soldier without a citizen willing to keep a boss breathing was a soldier with nothing to guard. The envelope said, "I see what you are doing. Keep doing it. When the world comes for him, I will come too." She did not take them. He respected her more, not less. On the Wednesday of the 2nd week, the world came. Rebecca Alden did not announce a surprise audit. Surprise audits that announced themselves were not audits. She simply appeared at the 4th floor station at 10:15 in the morning, when the day shift was thin and the night shift had gone home, with 2 hospital-brand tote bags, a fresh tablet, and the flat expression of a woman who had already decided what she was going to find. She took 417 last, which was the tell. Nia was not there. Nia was home, asleep with her arm across Lila's chest, dreaming that the eviction envelope had grown teeth. Marion was on the ward. Marion watched Alden go into the room, and she watched the door close, and she counted, under her breath, to 60. Then she counted to 60 again. Inside 417, Alden checked the wires and the levels and the chart and the sheet. She moved the pillow. She lifted the edge of the mattress and ran a gloved hand between the frame and the springs. She stood back and looked at the floor. Under the bed, wedged between the wheel bracket and the base plate, something butter yellow was showing. She crouched. She reached. She pulled out a piece of thin plastic the size of a credit card, printed with a cartoon bear and the words, Holloway, Lila, Kindergarten. The badge from the front of a brown teddy backpack. The corner had caught on the bracket the last time a small girl had crawled underneath to pat a dragon's hand. Alden looked at the badge. She looked at the man on the bed. She looked at the security camera in the corner, which had been dead for 6 weeks and had never been fixed, and she smiled a very small smile. At the same hour, in a corner office 1 floor down, Dr. Walter Cranston was signing paperwork. His office smelled like coffee that had been kept warm too long and cologne applied at 6 in the morning to a body that had drunk at 11 the night before. He signed with the gold cross pen his ex-wife had given him. He signed the order to withdraw ventilatory and nutritional support from JD VIP 0714, effective Friday of the following week at 1400 hours. He signed the internal justification, which cited absence of neurological improvement over 118 days, and the standing directive from the private payer's clinical liaison, whose name was not on the form. He signed a third page too, which authorized the private payer to be notified of the scheduled cessation via the routing code that Nia had seen once and had not recognized. 6 letters, 1 dash, a code that led, through 2 shell foundations and a chain of Delaware LLCs, to a Manhattan office where a man in a charcoal 3-piece Tom Ford suit was expecting the notification. Cranston capped the pen. He put the pen back in his breast pocket. He drank the last inch of the coffee. He did not think about the man in 417 as a man. He had trained himself out of that habit 30 years earlier. He thought about his tea time on Saturday and the check he would deposit on Monday. In a room the hospital did not know about, 4 blocks south, Park Junpyo was drinking convenience store coffee and listening. He had cloned the maintenance radio in the 3rd week of vigil. The maintenance channel was where everything that mattered got said before it got written down. Custodians heard it first, then charge nurses, then supervisors. He listened to 8 hours a day of buffer waxing and mop bucket requests for the 2 minutes of any given week that mattered. At 10:42 on the Wednesday of the 2nd week, a female voice he had catalogued as Alden, Rebecca, supervisor, cold, thorough said, on a channel she should not have been using, "Get me Jimenez from social services on the callback. Room 417 situation, and 1 additional. Personal item found under bed. Minor child, staff related. Set the meeting for 5 days." At 10:51, a male voice he had catalogued as Cranston, Walter, attending, corrupt, lazy said, on a different channel that he should also not have been using, "Notify the payer. Withdrawal scheduled Friday next, 1400, standard confirmation code." Park Junpyo lowered the coffee cup very slowly onto the table. He looked at the map of Manhattan pinned to the wall above the sink. He looked at the small red pin stuck in the address of a Bronx hospital, and at the small blue pin stuck in the address of a midtown office. He drew a line between them in his head. He knew, the way a soldier knows, that his boss had been walked into a trap that had been closing for 6 months, and that the trap was now 9 days from snapping. He also knew that if he moved too fast, he would spring it early and lose the boss for good. So he did what a good soldier does when the world catches fire. He drank the rest of the coffee. He put a second envelope in the cistern that night, thicker than the first 2, with a folded index card inside on which he had drawn, in blue pen, a fish and an arrow pointing up. The message the nurse would not touch would be waiting for her when she came back on shift. The maintenance channel was, of course, being listened to on the other end as well. Kang Do-yoon received the intercept at 3 in the afternoon in an office 32 floors above 5th Avenue, in a chair that cost more than the annual salary of the nurse whose badge had just been photographed. He listened to the audio twice. He looked out the window. He straightened the M-shaped tie pin at his throat. He did not smile. He rarely smiled. He picked up a black desk phone and said 1 word into it in Korean. "Chingso," cleaning. On the other end of the line, in an apartment in Flushing that reeked of cigarette smoke and gun oil, Choi Sung-hoon put down a bowl of jjajangmyeon, wiped his mouth with the back of his gloved hand, and reached for the black bomber jacket on the back of the chair. Kang Do-yoon set the phone in its cradle. He crossed to the window. He looked north, past the reservoir, past the bridges, toward the Bronx. 9 days is a long time, Hyungnim, he said aloud, to no one. Let us not make you wait so long. Nia came back on shift the next night, not knowing that anything had shifted. Marion did not tell her about the audit. Marion had not been told, either. Only Alden and the room had been in the room, and she had learned across 3 decades of nursing that a woman who did not know something could not accidentally reveal it. Marion simply worked closer to Nia that night than the night before. She poured her coffee twice instead of once. She took the round on 411 so Nia could stay with 417 an extra 10 minutes. At 2 in the morning, Lila read the story again. She had memorized the words now and was not really reading, only performing memory as reading, the way small children do. She got to the part where the koi becomes a dragon, and she stopped and put her palm flat against the back of the man's left hand and said, very seriously, "You can wake up when you're ready. I'll wait." Nia stood in the doorway and pressed her mouth into a line that would not tremble. At 3:40 in the morning, her phone buzzed in her pocket. She stepped into the corridor to look at it. Supervisor Rebecca Alden. 1 line of text. Please stop by my office at the start of your shift on Monday. Social services will be present. There is a matter concerning the 417 room and a personal item that requires clarification. Nia read the text twice. She read it a third time. She put the phone back in her pocket. She walked back into 417 and stood at the foot of the bed and looked at her daughter, who was patting a dragon's hand, and at the man on the bed, whose eyes were closed and whose breathing had not changed, and whose chest, at some point in the last 2 weeks, had begun to belong, in her mind, to the same small circle as her daughter's. She had believed, 10 days earlier, that she was in a story about a nurse and a patient. She understood now that she was in a different story. In this one, a woman was reading a bedtime book to a boss whose enemies knew where he slept, and a supervisor with a red lanyard had a photograph of a child's badge, and an attending physician had already signed a page that would end a man's life 8 days from now at 2 in the afternoon. She did not know all of that yet. She knew the shape of it, the way you know the shape of a room in the dark by the way the air moves. She crossed to the bed. She bent close to Min Jae's ear, so close her lips almost touched the small silver stud of his hospital tag. "They're coming for you," she whispered. Inside the ceiling of his skull, the small welded switch sweated another degree. "I don't know when, I don't know from where, but they're coming." She straightened up. She smoothed his sheet the way she smoothed Layla's blanket at home. On the left side of his neck, the koi kept swimming under the cotton, upward toward whatever koi swim toward when they have decided they are not done being fish. Nia walked out of room 417 at the end of that shift with the whisper still on her lips and the sunrise already climbing the east windows of the ghost wing. She did not go home to sleep. She went to the break room, picked up Lila, and rode the bus in the wrong direction on purpose, then doubled back on the D train because a woman with something to lose learns to fold her own path. Monday morning came the way trouble comes when it has been scheduled. Nia put Lila in her butter yellow dress, brushed the puff up with a wide-tooth comb, and pressed the peach cardigan flat against the small chest with the palm of her hand. She rehearsed the meeting the whole way to the hospital, her mouth moving without sound, Marion's voice from the last shift folded inside her head like a note. She never made it into the office. Rebecca Alden was standing at the staff entrance of the ghost wing when Nia turned the corner from the elevator, with Lila's hand tucked inside her own. The tablet was already up. The lanyard sat crooked. Behind Rebecca stood a woman in a beige raincoat, holding a leather folio against her chest, and Nia understood the shape of the day before a single word was spoken. Ms. Holloway. Nia stopped 3 feet short. Lila leaned into her hip. This is Ms. Jimenez from Social Services. We're going to walk down the hall to my office and have a conversation. You said Monday morning. It is Monday morning. It is. And in that conversation, I am also going to inform you of a preventive suspension pending review. Effective now. So we can save you a shift you would not have finished anyway. Nia felt the small warm hand close tighter around 3 of her fingers. She kept her chin at the same angle. She did not look at Jimenez. She looked at Rebecca's crooked lanyard and let the silence do the first cut. Preventive of what? Of a policy breach involving a minor on the ward, amongst other things. Other things. Later, Miss Holloway, office. Nia looked past Rebecca's shoulder at the double doors of the ghost wing and heard her own pulse in her ears, the way people hear the surf after they have stepped away from the beach. Somewhere down that hallway, a man she had promised to keep talking to lay in a gray gown with a koi swimming up his neck, and somewhere in an office at the other end of the same corridor, a supervisor held a butter-yellow badge with her daughter's name printed on it. Bring the child, Rebecca added, softer, as if softness could soften what she had already put in the room. There's a playmat in the conference alcove. Miss Jimenez arranged it. Nia looked down at Lila. Lila looked up. Mama, is this the meeting? Yes, sweetheart. Do I do quiet? You do quiet. The office had 2 chairs on the wrong side of the desk, and Rebecca chose the taller one. Jimenez pulled hers closer. Angled, the way trained people angle themselves when they mean to appear kind. On the desk between them sat a small yellow rectangle with a black lanyard clip, Holloway Lila Kindergarten, printed in a school district font, the plastic corner slightly bent where a bed bracket had bitten into it. Do you recognize this item? Yes. Where was it recovered? You know where it was recovered. For the record, Ms. Holloway. Room 417, under the bed of a patient in comfort care. Jimenez wrote nothing. She had not opened the folio. That was the tell. Whatever they had already decided did not need writing. Rebecca went through it with the measured patience of a person practicing for a deposition. Unauthorized presence of a minor in a restricted care unit. Failure to disclose dependent care circumstances at hire. Repeated deviation from comfort-only protocol on JD VIP 0714. Refusal to accept reassignment when offered informally. The list took 4 minutes. Somewhere in the middle of it, Lila slid off her chair, walked to the playmat, sat cross-legged, and opened a book about a rabbit who lived in a mailbox. Are you charging me with something? I am suspending you, pending review. Payroll will process the shift you already worked. HR will be in contact. How long is preventive? As long as review takes, you will surrender your badge and your locker key at the desk before you leave. My locker includes any personal effects, sneakers, lunch bag, photographs, anything you don't want left. Nia thought of the eviction envelope tucked inside the lining of the lunch bag and did not blink. And the patient. Rebecca lifted her eyes off the tablet for the first time since sitting down. The patient is not your concern anymore, Ms. Holloway. He has not been your concern from the start. He is a patient. He is a case number. And a physician's order. Jimenez tapped her folio once against the edge of the desk. Ms. Holloway, my part of this is separate. I need to schedule a follow-up visit with you and Lila at your home address of record. Wednesday, 10 a.m. Can you confirm the address is current? Nia gave her the address. It was current. It would not be current by Wednesday, but she did not tell Jimenez that yet, because a mother learns to hold 2 truths in the same breath. Thank you. And Ms. Holloway, this is not adversarial. This is a wellness check. Wellness of who? Of the child. The child had macaroni last night and slept 10 hours. Even so, Lila closed the rabbit book. She walked to Nia's knee. She put her cheek there and looked up at Jimenez with the frank calm of a 5-year-old who has been told, when the world gets loud, to breathe through the nose. My mama is a nurse, Lila said. Jimenez nodded once. Good, Lila said, and went back to the mat. At the front desk of the wing, Marion Whitaker was on shift already, coffee in one hand and a stack of intake charts in the other, and she stopped chewing her lower lip when she saw the shape of the two of them coming down the corridor with a beige raincoat trailing. She said nothing. She stepped around the counter and walked with Nia to the locker room like a woman walks a friend to a car in a bad parking lot. Inside, with the door pushed until it clicked, Marion set down the coffee and stood with her back to it. "Give me your bag." "Marion." "Give me the bag, honey. I'll walk it out with you at shift change. Alden's got someone posted at the exit doing spot checks." Nia surrendered the lunch bag. Marion opened it, looked at the lining, closed it again, and did not say the word envelope. She reached into her own scrub pocket and pulled out a folded sheet of pink paper, the kind hospital payroll used for advance stubs. She pressed it into Nia's palm. "That's half of Friday. Don't argue." "Marion." "Half. Don't argue. Do you have somewhere for tonight?" "Yes." "Do you?" Nia looked at her. "Tonight, yes." Marion held her elbow the way older women hold younger women when they have run out of words that would help. She looked at Lila. "Baby, you look after your mama today, all right?" "I look after her every day," Lila said. Marion laughed once with her whole chest and then closed the sound off with the back of her hand. Nia carried the sneakers and the lunch bag and the small photo of her mother that had lived on the inside of the locker door for 8 months and walked out through the loading bay with Lila's hand in hers. The badge was already gone. The keychain felt lighter than a keychain should feel. The phone rang on the corner of Grand Concourse. She almost let it go. It was an unknown number, and it was Monday, and she had reached the daily quota of bad news. But a mother answers, because the school could call, and the school could always call. "Ms. Holloway." "Yes, this is the leasing office. I'm calling to confirm you received the 48-hour notice on Friday. Just a courtesy call. You have until Wednesday, 7 p.m., to remove personal belongings from Unit 4B. Building will change the cylinder at that time, regardless of presence." She did not ask the man for mercy. Mercy was not what leasing offices sold on Monday mornings. "Wednesday, 7. "Yes, ma'am. Anything left in the unit after that time will be placed in the corridor for 24 hours and then removed by the super." "Understood. Have a good day, ma'am." She stood with the phone against her ear for the length of half a block after he hung up. Lila watched her. "Mama?" "Yes, my heart. Are we walking home?" "We're walking." They walked. She did not take the bus, because the bus was $2.40, and she had $11 in cash, and the half paycheck was pink paper that would not become money until she got to a check cashing place, and a check cashing place would take 9%. She did the math the way she did math now, in fractions of hours of work she no longer had. They stopped at a bodega on Tremont for a bologna sandwich and a small carton of milk. Lila insisted on paying with the $2 she had saved in the teddy backpack. The cashier let her. He gave the change back to Nia without a word and slid a plum across the counter as a gift, and did not meet her eyes when he did it, because pride is a small thing you protect for people who still have very little else. The apartment door was already locked when they got there. The cylinder had been changed already, not on Wednesday, on Monday, in the small way landlords in the Bronx sometimes lied about deadlines by 2 days when they thought a tenant would fold quiet. 2 black trash bags sat in the corridor with the neck twisted shut. On top of them, the storybook. The Koi Who Swam Upstream, blue cover, Fordham Road. The corner slightly bent where the vendor had bent it herself, weighing it in her hand. Nia picked up the book first, before the bags, before she checked the bags. The book first, because if the bags had shoes and photographs and a wedding band from a marriage that no longer existed, the book had the only story that a 5-year-old had chosen to memorize. Lila reached for it. You carry Mr. Silver's brother. He's not Mr. Silver's brother. He's the koi. You carry the koi. Nia dragged the bags to the top of the stairwell, sat down on the top step, and for the first time since 7:04 that morning, she pressed the heels of her hands to her eye sockets. She did not cry. She measured. $11 in cash. A pink stub for 160-something that would become 140-something at the check cashing. 2 trash bags. A book. A daughter. A suspension letter. A Wednesday wellness check at an address that was no longer hers. A Friday she had promised nothing to, but that had already been circled in a pen she did not hold. Lila sat next to her and put the storybook on her own lap and turned to the page with the koi crossing the waterfall. Mama? Read one. Baby, Mama can't right now. I'll read it. Listen. Lila held the book at the height of Nia's ear and put her small mouth to it. The koi did not stop, even when the water was too fast. Even when the fisherman came, even when his brothers turned around and swam back down. Lila closed the book, kept her mouth by her mother's ear, and finished from memory, because he was not swimming for himself anymore. Nia opened her eyes. She did not tell her daughter that a 5-year-old should not have to read a book to her mother on a stairwell step in a building she had just been evicted from. She kissed the crown of the pineapple puff instead, and stood up, and picked up the heavier of the 2 bags. Come on, my life. Where? Back. Back where? Back to the wing. The train downtown was almost empty at that hour. Nia sat with Lila across her lap, the 2 bags at her feet, the storybook wedged between them, and let the child sleep against her collarbone. She counted stops instead of thinking. She had $11, a book, a suspension letter, and a corridor with a bed in it, where a man she had promised to keep talking to would be alone at 3 in the morning if she was not there. She had nowhere to sleep that was hers. The wing had a break room with a lock she knew, and a supervisor who was not on nights, and a colleague who would look the other way, for 1 shift, and no more. She did not have a plan past that. She had a next hour. In the arithmetic she was doing, a next hour was enough. The 4 train reached 149th, and she carried the smaller bag, and the sleeping child, and the book, and left the heavier bag with a woman who ran a laundromat on Willis Avenue, who owed her nothing, and took it anyway, because the woman had known Nia's mother, and some debts are older than the people paying them. By the time she came through the loading bay at 1:08 in the morning, the wing was in its low tide. The supervisor's office was dark. Marion's shift had ended at 11. The night nurse was a temp Nia knew by face and not by name, a woman with tired kindness and no interest in anyone's story. Nia carried Lila through the service corridor with the child's head against her shoulder and the puff crushed slightly to one side, and let herself into the disused break room with a key that had not been taken from her keychain because the key had been retired the year before and was no longer on any list. She laid Lila on the cot with the peach cardigan folded under the small head and the storybook open beside her on the page with the koi crossing the waterfall. She did not sit. She walked out into the corridor and stood outside room 417 in scrubs that were no longer hers, badgeless, keyless, and pushed the door open exactly the way she had pushed it open on 80 other nights. He was there. The koi was there. The bandage above his brow had been changed by whoever had done the 11 o'clock round, and done badly, the tape loose at the corner. She did that first. She washed her hands at the sink, dried them on the coarse paper, peeled the tape flat, smoothed the gauze, checked the IV line for slack, adjusted the pillow 2 inches lower because his neck had been at the wrong angle. She did not turn on the overhead. She worked by the blue of the cardiac monitor and the amber of the pulse oximeter, and she moved slow, because moving slow was the last thing she still owned. At the end of it, she leaned toward the ear. I lost the job today. The koi did not move. They took the badge. They changed my locks. I brought my baby back here because there is no other roof I trust between now and morning. I am telling you because I promised I would keep talking to you like you can hear me. She wet the small sponge and touched it to his lower lip. If you can hear me, Mr. Yu, I need you to know I did not run. Somewhere 3 floors below, at the service stairwell that led up the north face of the ghost wing from the loading dock, a heavy fire door opened, without a sound, because the hinge had been oiled 2 nights before by a man in maintenance coveralls with an earpiece in his right ear. 4 men in dark clothing came through it single file. The lead man wore a black bomber with a technical lining and black gloves and carried a suppressed Sig Sauer P226 down along his thigh. On his right hand, at the base of the thumb, a partial tiger tattoo caught the emergency light and vanished again. They climbed. 1st floor, 2nd, 3rd. At the 3rd floor landing, the lead man stopped, raised 2 fingers, and pointed up. The other 3 nodded. He put a small black device against the door lock, waited for the click, and eased the door open 1/2 inch. The ghost wing lay above them like an animal that had already fallen asleep. Down the corridor, in a room whose camera had been dead for 6 weeks, Nia set the sponge in the tray and put her hand flat against the koi tattoo through the cotton of the gown and let it stay there for the length of 1 long breath. I don't know what you are, she said, quiet, close. I know what you're not. You're not garbage. The koi under the cotton did not move. The lights on the 4th floor flickered once. She did not know why. She turned toward the doorframe and listened for a full 3 seconds and heard nothing more than the hum of the ice machine at the far end of the corridor and the faint clatter of a supply cart 2 rooms down. Hospitals at that hour had a language of their own. Small clicks, long hums, the soft pressurized sigh of a ventilator adjusting itself on a floor above. She had learned to read that language the way sailors read wind, and something in the wind had shifted an inch. She stepped back to the ear. If I have to move, she whispered, I will move. If I have to hide her, I will hide her. Do you hear me? I am not going to leave you here for whoever they are. She said it quiet and then quieter, the second sentence for herself and not for him, because there are promises a mother says out loud into a room in order to hear them come back to her from the walls. She walked to the door of 417 and looked left down the corridor toward the disused break room where her child slept, with the koi book folded open beside her small hand. Then right, toward the elevator bank, and the shape of the night nurse's silhouette bent over the station monitor 2 counters away. Then back at the man in the bed with the koi tattoo running up under his collar. She had 1 hallway, 1 child, 1 man, no badge, no key, $11 in a scrub pocket that did not belong to her anymore. She did the arithmetic again, standing in the doorway. It came out the same. She stepped back inside 417 and pulled the visitor's chair 2 inches closer to the head of the bed so that if she had to sit, she could sit inside arm's reach of the pulse oximeter cable. She adjusted the sheet across his chest. She wet the sponge 1 more time and touched it to his lip. She did not know that inside him a soldered switch had, at the word baby, turned another 1/4 of a turn. Down the corridor, past the disused break room, past the ice machine, past the second nurse's counter, and the empty gurney parked against the wall for a transfer that would not happen, the fluorescent tube above bay 415 buzzed twice and steadied. The lead man in the stairwell reached the top step, put his palm against the fire door, and began to press. The pressure held for 1 long breath before the latch gave. Sang-hoon eased the fire door open 2 inches, listened for the corridor's rhythm, and stepped through. 3 men slid in behind him in a line that did not touch the walls. The soles of their boots met the linoleum without sound. He raised 2 fingers and pointed east. At the nurse's station, The temporary night nurse was on the phone in the break alcove, her back turned, a paper cup of coffee cooling on the counter. The overhead speakers whispered a paging tone for a different floor. Sang-hoon read the layout in one sweep, marked the temp as a non-threat, and moved past her sightline without turning his head. Inside 417, Nia was tucking the corner of the sheet under the pad by Min-jae's hip. Her palm brushed the back of his left hand as she straightened the linen. She meant to say one more thing at his ear and let him rest. She lifted her head instead. The floor lights above the doorway blinked off. Not the rooms, the corridors. The narrow strip of white under the door went black. A hush fell over the wing that did not belong to a hospital at night. Machines still hummed, but the air had thickened. She knew the shape of that quiet. She had felt it once, 6 years ago, on a stairwell in the Bronx when a man had followed her too close and then stopped following. Her body remembered before her mind did. Her hand moved before thought. She crossed the room in 3 steps, slid the visitor chair back against the wall so it would not scrape, and knelt at the bed. The frame was high enough. The linen skirt reached to the floor. She lifted it. She left the room in a walk that was not a walk, out into the corridor, down 2 doors, into the disused break room. Lila was curled on the cot, with the peach cardigan under her cheek, and the storybook open beside her small hand. Nia gathered her up in one motion. The cardigan stayed. The book stayed. The child did not fully wake. She murmured something soft against Nia's collarbone and let herself be carried. Back in 417, Nia lowered her to the floor at the far side of the bed, on the wall opposite the door. She lifted the linen skirt again and eased Lila under the frame. On her side, small knees drawn in. The child blinked once. She saw her mother's face very close. "Not a sound, my life," Nia whispered. "Not a sound. Whatever you hear, whatever you hear." Lila's mouth made a small, round shape. She nodded once against the floor. Nia touched her cheek with the pad of her thumb, dropped the linen skirt, and rose. She had one heartbeat to choose where to stand. She chose the head of the bed. She placed her body between the door and the pillow. She put both hands on the rail as though she were mid-adjustment. Her back was straight. Her chin was down. She had done this pose 10,000 times, and she did it now with a face that offered nothing. The door opened without a knock. He came in slow. The bomber jacket did not rustle. The gloved right hand was already up, and the suppressor cleared the doorframe before his shoulder did. 2 men slid in behind him. The 4th stayed at the threshold, back to the corridor. Sang-hoon took the room in one long look. He read the bed. He read the machines. He read her. "Step away from the patient," he said. His English was clean, quiet. The voice of a man who had never had to raise it in this job. Nia did not move. She kept her hands on the rail. "I said step." "I'm charting," she said. "You want me to release his line? Ask me in a way that doesn't get you a hospital lawyer in the morning." His mouth curved a 1/4 inch. He liked that. He also did not care. He crossed to the bed in 4 steps. His left hand caught her by the hair at the base of the skull, high and tight, and pulled her back off the rail with a control that did not hurt more than it needed to. She did not cry out. Her hands went up in the trained, soft way of a nurse who has been grabbed before, palms open, elbows down. He turned her a quarter and put her on her knees at the head of the bed. Her forehead came level with Min-jae's temple. The suppressor came up. He set the muzzle against the space between Min-jae's brows, with the touch of a man who had done this indoors many times. His right thumb keyed the radio at his collar. He spoke in Korean, low, unhurried. 보스관께서 형님, 유산 감사드린다고 전하십니다. He said it again, in English, for her benefit, because he wanted her to hear the sentence her body had already understood. Boss Kang sends thanks for the inheritance, 형님. Under the closed lids of the man on the bed, something behind 11 weeks of ceiling tiles took the sentence and set it down on a table. Kang Do-yoon, Ash, the one who had sat at his right hand in every meeting since the Incheon summer, the one who had put a hand on his shoulder at the pier the night before the pier went red, the one who had called him Hyungnim in a voice that was learning to mean something else. Min-jae did not need to see the man in the bomber jacket to know whose money was on that radio. The routing code, the shell foundations, the payer marked confidential. A name had been standing behind that curtain the entire time, and now the curtain had moved. He had come into this hospital not knowing who had bought his coffin. He had lain in it for 11 weeks with the wrong name on the lid. His own second in command. The soldered switch in his chest turned another quarter, then another. It did not click yet. At the head of the bed, Nia's cheek was 2 inches from his. The hand at her hair kept her still. She could feel the barrel through the air by the small displacement of it. Her eyes were open, and they were on his face, because his face was the only face in this room she was willing to look at right now. Under the bed, Lila had understood the word sound, the way a child understands a hot stove. She had folded her arms across her mouth. She was crying without noise. Her small chest heaved in the tight rhythm of a child who has decided obedience is a place to live inside her body. One tear left Nia's lower lash. It ran the length of her cheek, slowed at the corner of her jaw, and fell. It landed on the back of her own forearm, where her arm braced against the mattress. Warm. It slid down the inside of her wrist and off the heel of her palm. It struck the exposed skin above the pulse oximeter on Min-jae's right index finger, ran the length of the finger, and pooled in the seam of his left hand, where it lay open on the sheet, palm up, IV taped to the vein. It found the fold between his thumb and his forefinger. 11 weeks of counting ceiling tiles. 14 nights of a child's voice reading about a fish climbing a waterfall. A woman whispering his name at 3:14 in the morning like it still belonged to him. A whisper on a Sabbath saying they were coming for him and she did not know when. A whisper tonight saying she had lost the job and had brought her baby back here anyway and had not run. And now, a tear. The switch clicked. His left hand closed. It did not tremble. It did not fumble. 16 years of training in the small room behind the Norabang in Itaewon do not leave a body the way manners do. His hand went where it had been going since Tuesday, and it moved at the speed of a hand that has been waiting. It caught Sang-hoon's left ankle above the boot. Sang-hoon looked down. The look took a full quarter second. In that quarter second, Min-jae's right hand slid the pulse oximeter off, took the IV line between 2 fingers, and pulled it free of the tape at the back of his own hand without breaking the port. His eyes opened. Not wide, half. The look of a man rejoining a room he already understood. He pivoted on the hip. He weighed 190 pounds, and 11 weeks of atrophy would have taken most of it, but the pivot did not need most of it. It needed leverage, and it needed the ankle. He rotated at the hip from the mattress and drove his hand through the plane, where a knee is not built to bend. The joint gave with a sound that was mostly cloth. Sang-hoon went down on the side that still worked. The hand on Nia's hair let go on the way down, because a body under that kind of pain lets go of anything that is not the ground. She fell forward across the head of the bed and rolled, low, off the mattress toward the wall. Her palm slapped the linen skirt to keep it down. She did not look under. She kept her body between the door and the frame. The second man stepped in with a suppressed pistol coming up. Min-jae was already off the bed. He took the pistol at the wrist, not the barrel, and turned it toward the man's own shoulder in a motion the man had been trained against and had never been able to actually stop. The suppressed round went into the drywall above the medical gas panel. Then Min-jae's elbow was in the man's throat, and the man's own weapon was in Min-jae's hand, and the man was on the floor with a hand at his neck that was not going to help him breathe. The third man reached for the radio at his collar instead of the weapon at his hip. He was young. He wanted permission. He did not get it. Min-jae crossed the room in the 2 steps that separated them, took his jaw with the heel of his hand, and put the base of his skull into the doorframe with a controlled tap that dropped him where he stood. He caught the man's body before it hit the tile. The fourth man, still at the threshold, saw a corridor. He turned to run. Min-jae did not chase. He raised the suppressed pistol he had just taken, sighted, and put a round into the meat of the back of the runner's calf. The runner went down inside the doorway. Min-jae stepped over him, closed the door with his heel, turned the runner's face to the tile, and pressed the muzzle behind his ear until the runner understood what silent meant. Under a minute and a half had passed. The gown had come loose at one shoulder. The koi carp on his neck lay bare down to the collarbone. Sang-hoon was still on the floor by the bed, alive, gripping the ruined knee, his forehead against the linoleum. Min-jae walked around the bed and put the boot of a man who had not worn a boot in 3 months on the shoulder blade of the man who had come to kill him. He crouched. He picked up the radio Sang-hoon had spoken into and held it between finger and thumb like a small dead animal. He looked at Nia. She was pressed to the wall, hands still half up, breath in her chest but not in her throat. He did not speak to her yet. He turned his head 3 inches toward the space beneath the bed. "You can breathe now," he said. His voice was quiet and slightly cracked from 11 weeks of not using it. Slow, in through the nose. The linen skirt trembled. Nia went to her knees at once and lifted it. Lila was there, eyes enormous, arms still across her mouth. Nia held out both hands. The child crawled to her, small palms flat against the tile, and put her forehead into her mother's collarbone. She did not cry loud. She cried the way she had been told to cry, silent, into the fabric. "Good girl," Nia said. Her hand was on the back of the puff. "Good girl, good girl." Min-jae keyed the radio. He waited 3 seconds. Then he spoke, in Korean, in the voice he had used to run rooms with 40 men in them. "Jumpyo, 4층, 20분." He set the radio down on the bedside cabinet next to the water cup. He looked at Nia and Lila against the wall. He looked at the man on the floor with the knee. He looked at the small yellow badge that had never been retrieved from the file on Rebecca Alden's desk, at the pillow 2 inches too low, at the visitor chair against the wall, at the IV line dangling free with a bead of saline at the tip. He took all of it. He put it somewhere he was going to keep. Then he turned back to Sang-hoon and lowered his mouth to the ear that was still working. "Tell Kang," he said. His English was accented and even. "Tell him the fish woke up. Tell him I know who fed the koi." Sang-hoon's eyes closed. It was not a nod. It was the closest thing to one a man in that kind of pain could offer. By the time the fourth man on the floor at the door had understood that his career was over, footsteps on the stairwell were already coming up. Not 4, 1, fast, but not running. The door opened on Park Junpyo in gray maintenance coveralls, a fake ID on his chest, the earpiece black in his right ear. He took the room in one glance the way Min-jae had. His face did what a young soldier's face does when he sees his boss standing on his own 2 feet after 118 days of no. He bowed. Not deep, the kind of bow a man gives on a battlefield. "Hyungnim, Chunpyoya." Min-jae's mouth almost moved into something. "Cha." Down at the loading bay. 4 minutes. 3 men here, one of ours. He tilted his head at Sang-hoon. "Take him, alive." The other 3, quiet. "Camera on this floor still?" "Dead 6 weeks. I kept it dead." "The temp at the station?" "On break. East stairwell." She heard nothing. I moved the paging tone. Min-jae looked at Nia. She was on her heels against the wall, Lila's face still in her chest. The child's name. "Lila," Nia said. Her voice held. Her hands did not. "Lila Holloway. She's 5. "Lila," Min-jae said. He crouched, slow, to the level of the puff of hair. He did not reach for her. He put his hand flat on his own knee where she could see it. His fingers were long, and the koi tattoo ran up the side of his neck into the disheveled hair. "You read to me," he said. He waited until she lifted her cheek from her mother's collar. "You read to me every night. About the fish?" She looked at him. Her lip trembled. She nodded once. "You made me wake up," he said. He said it in the smoothest voice he had. "Do you know that? You made me wake up. Now I don't let the world touch you." Her eyes filled. Her mouth stayed closed the way she had been told. She reached one small hand out and put 2 fingers on the back of his left hand, the same 2 fingers she had put there on the first night in the visitor chair. "Mr. Sleeping Dragon," she whispered. Something in his face moved. He did not smile, but something moved. He stood. Junpyo had already begun to work. 2 of the men on the floor were bound, hooded, and vertical, moving under their own damaged legs down the corridor toward the service elevator. Sang-hoon rode a small folding wheelchair Junpyo had somehow produced from a supply closet, a strap across the chest, a strap across the good ankle, a rag not gagging his mouth but resting against it in warning. The 4th man walked between them at gunpoint, with a jacket over his cuffed wrists. Min-jae took the sheet from the bed and wrapped it once around his waist over the gown for decency. He picked up the storybook from the floor and put it under his arm. He picked up Lila's small teddy bear backpack from beside the cot in the break room in one detour and slung it over his shoulder as though it belonged to him. He turned to Nia. She was standing now. Scrubs, sneakers, the lanyard she had already surrendered gone from her chest, the small silver watch still clipped at her pocket. "Do you have anything here you need?" She looked around the room she had cleaned 2,000 times. She looked at the linen skirt on the floor. She looked at the empty visitor chair. She looked at the number on the wristband on his wrist. JD VIP 0714, 14th of July. A birthday in Korean order. A signature from a soldier saying you still exist. "No," she said. "Nothing here." "Then come." She crossed the room and lifted Lila into her arms. The child fit against her hip the way she had fit at 6 months. Min-jae opened the door. He looked left. He looked right. He nodded to Junpyo. He walked ahead of Nia through the corridor. He did not walk like a man who had been in a bed for 11 weeks. He walked like a man who was choosing every step. At the loading bay, a black van sat with the side door already open. The heater was on. 2 blankets, a car seat in the middle row that had not been there 20 minutes ago. Junpyo did not explain the car seat. He did not have to. Min-jae stopped Nia at the door of the van with one open hand, palm up, not touching her. She looked at him. "Manhattan," he said. "Tonight. A place with a lock. A door with my name behind it. In the morning I will send someone for what you left with the laundry woman on Willis. In the morning I will call Ms. Jimenez myself and cancel a wellness check at an address that is no longer yours. In the afternoon, I will pay Marion Whitaker what she does not know she is about to be paid." Nia's mouth opened. Nothing came out. She closed it. "You chose to treat me like a human," he said, "when no one else in this building would look at me. Now it is my turn." She did not answer. She stepped up into the van. She strapped Lila into the seat with hands that finally began to shake because they were finally allowed to. She pulled the blanket up to her daughter's chin. Lila's small hand came out from under the blanket and held the storybook against her stomach. The van pulled out of the loading bay at 04:20 sharp. 6 weeks later, on a Wednesday morning that smelled like river and coffee, a black 3-piece suit crossed the lobby of a building on 5th Avenue and did not stop at the desk. The koi carp on the wearer's neck was hidden under the high collar of the shirt. In an office on the 32nd floor, a man with a scar across the right eyebrow and a Patek Philippe watch had exactly 4 seconds to understand the shape that had just entered his doorway before the door closed behind it. Ash did not get to finish the coffee. What was said in that room and what was left in it is a matter for another night. That same evening, in a penthouse 40 blocks south, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a Manhattan skyline lit like a constellation fallen to the earth, Nia sat on the arm of a leather chair and watched Lila arrange the storybook, the peach cardigan, and the yellow butter dress in a small row on the rug. The child was building a house for a fish. She was singing to herself in a language she was learning from a woman who came 3 afternoons a week. Min Jae came into the room without sound. He was wearing the black suit still, the tie loose at the throat, the koi visible for the first time under the collar in weeks. He did not sit. He stood beside the arm of the chair. He looked at the child on the rug. Nia did not turn her head. Is it done? It is done. She let her breath out. The last piece of 11 weeks that had been sitting on her chest since a corridor in the Bronx went black, finally moved off of it. He looked down at her. His hand came to rest on the back of her neck, gentle, warm, the same hand that had closed on an ankle in a hospital room at 3:47 in the morning. He did not squeeze. He did not hold her in place, but his palms stayed. "You chose to treat me like a human," he said, quietly, once more, when no one else saw me. "Now it is my turn." On the rug, Lila laid the storybook flat and opened it to the page where the koi climbs the waterfall. She did not know she was being watched. She turned the page. Outside, the city held its breath the way cities do when a name has just moved back onto the board. He did not let her go. The penthouse settled into its own quiet after that. Nia stayed on the arm of the leather chair for a long moment, feeling the warmth of Min Jae's palm on the back of her neck without asking it to move. Lila turned another page of the storybook, humming something the Korean tutor had taught her that afternoon, the small vowels lifting and dropping in the wrong places on purpose because she liked the way they sounded. Min Jae let his hand slide down to Nia's shoulder, then away. He crossed the room to the tall window and stood with his back to them. The city below looked like a circuit board someone had polished. He watched a tugboat push a low barge under the Queensboro Bridge and counted the lights along the barge until he lost the count. He had not counted anything in months without a reason. This was the first time he had let himself do it for nothing. Behind him, Nia stood up and gathered the peach cardigan off the rug. "Bath," she said to Lila. "2 more pages." 2. Lila read them out loud, slowly, tapping the paper with a finger for each word. The koi crossed the shallows. The koi rested behind a stone. The koi began the last climb. She closed the book with both hands, the way a person closes a door on a small room they will come back to. In the hallway, Min Jae's phone buzzed once against the console table. He read the screen without picking it up. Park Jun-pyo, in Korean, 3 words. Willis pickup done. He typed back 1 character. Good. He put the phone face down. Nia paused in the doorway with Lila already on her hip. "The bag? Marisol has it downstairs. She'll bring it up when the water is running." Marisol, house manager. 2nd week. She keeps the list. There's a list. There's always a list. Nia looked at him a beat longer than she needed to and carried Lila down the hallway. Min Jae listened to the water start. He listened to Lila laugh once at something Nia said. Then he walked to the kitchen and poured himself a glass of water from a pitcher that was already cold, and drank it standing. The night manager of the building called the intercom at 10 to 9. A gentleman had left a package at the front desk. No name. Small box. Min Jae asked him to hold it. Then he called Jun-pyo. "Who came in tonight?" "No one on the list." "Camera on the desk." "I'm pulling it now." 10 seconds of silence. Older man. Gray overcoat. Left a box the size of a paperback and walked out. Face down the whole way. No car outside. Subway. Cranston? No. Thinner. And a limp on the right. Min Jae set the glass down on the counter without a sound. "Bring the box up. Do not open it. Bring it to the study. 2 minutes." He went to Lila's door first. He put his ear against the wood and heard the water splash, and Nia's low voice explaining that shampoo did not go in the eyes because eyes were for reading and reading was more important than shampoo. He almost smiled. He walked to the study instead and closed the door behind him. The box arrived in a black-gloved hand that then removed itself. Jumpyo waited outside. Min-jae took the box to the desk, put it under the lamp, and looked at it without touching it for 30 seconds. Brown paper. String tied in a knot the wrong way, right over left, the way older Korean men from a particular southern province tied string. He put on a pair of thin cotton gloves from the drawer and cut the string with a letter opener. Inside was a small wooden case, the kind used for a fountain pen. Inside the case was a cross pen, gold, the barrel worn along the clip where a thumb had pressed for decades. A folded slip of paper under the pen. 4 words in careful English print. I did not sign. Min-jae read it twice. He folded it back along the same creases and set it on the desk with the pen next to it. He opened the study door. Junpyo. Hyungnim. Cranston. He never went home after that Wednesday. His wife filed a missing persons on Sunday. Nobody looked hard. He was drinking through a lawyer. He was drinking through a threat. Yes. Find him tonight. Alive. Somewhere he can breathe. Yes. Min-jae closed the door again and stood over the desk. He had signed a lot of things in his life. He knew what a signature under pressure looked like on a page. He knew the shape a man's hand took when his hand was not his own. He had assumed the withdrawal order was a purchase. It was a receipt. The old man had been told to sign, and had signed, and then had gone underground with his own pen, the way a village boy hides the last coin from the tax collector. He would decide later what that was worth. Tonight, he only needed to know the man had a name and had used it. He walked back down the hallway. The bath was over. Lila sat cross-legged on the bed in the pink pajamas Nia had washed twice already, because Lila would not wear the new ones yet. Nia was combing the puff back into shape with a wide-tooth comb, patient, one section at a time. The comb moved through the curls the way a hand moves through a familiar pocket. Story? Lila said. You already read a story. A different one. Nia looked up at Min-jae in the doorway. He came in and sat on the far side of the bed, not close, and put a hand on the mattress. Which one? The one about the fish? You read that one. You read it. Min-jae took the storybook off the nightstand. He opened to the first page. He had heard this book 14 times through his teeth in the dark. He had never heard it in his own voice. He read the first line. His English was clean, not fluent enough to hide, and Lila corrected him twice on words she liked better her way. Nia sat down against the headboard with the comb still in her hand, and did not move. He kept reading. The koi crossed the shallows. The koi rested behind the stone. The koi began the last climb. He closed the book with both hands. Lila reached over and touched the koi that ran up his neck under the open collar. She did not say anything about it. She was too young to know what it was. She only knew he had one, and she liked the color. Sleep, Nia said. Sleep, Lila agreed, and rolled onto her side, and was asleep in the time it took Nia to reach the lamp. In the hall, Nia stopped with her back against the wall. Cranston is alive. She looked at him. He signed under a gun. He left me his pen tonight. Here. At the front desk. He knows where we are. He knows where I am. That is different. Nia let out one long breath through her nose. Tomorrow. Tomorrow, he agreed. They went back to the living room. Min-jae did not sit. He stood by the window again and watched the barge finish crossing under the bridge. Nia poured herself half a glass of wine from a bottle Marisol had left open and sat on the couch with her feet under her. Rebecca Alden, she said, not looking at him. Yes. You called Jimenez. I called Jimenez. What about Alden? He thought about it. He had thought about it in the car on the way back from the Fifth Avenue building, and in the elevator up, and while he watched Lila arrange the storybook and the peach cardigan on the rug. He had a list of names for Alden the way a butcher has a list for a Sunday. He put the list away. She keeps her job, she loses her ward. Meaning a hospital board in the Bronx receives a private donation next month for a new pediatric wing. The donation names a supervisor of oncology who is not her. She is reassigned to compliance training. She does not touch a chart again. That's not enough. It is enough for a woman who wanted to run a ward. It is not enough for a woman who wanted to run you. For that, I have other names. Nia turned the wine glass by the stem. Don't put them in front of me. I will not. She took a small sip. Marion. Paid. Not from me. From an estate she doesn't know exists. A cousin she had in Georgia who died and thought of her. She gets a check every quarter for the rest of her working life. Marion doesn't have a cousin in Georgia. She does now. Nia laughed. It was the first time he had heard the laugh since the elevator. It was a low sound, private. He held it inside his chest for a second and let it go. The bag from the laundromat, she said. In the guest room. I did not open it. There's nothing in it. I know. She looked at him then. He held her look. She looked away first, at the window. You go somewhere tomorrow, she said. Yes. Where? Uptown. There is a man who used to answer Kang's phone. He answered it once too many times to me. Alone? June Pyo. Come back before Lila wakes up. I will. Say it. I will come back before Lila wakes up. She nodded. She finished the wine in one small mouthful and set the glass down. She stood up, walked past him, and paused just close enough that her sleeve brushed his. She did not stop. She went down the hallway to the room she was still calling the guest room, even though she had unpacked half a shelf into it. Min-jae stayed at the window until 3. At 3:07, Junpyo texted, Cranston in a motel in Yonkers, 2nd floor, no visitors. Wife does not know he is alive. He has a duffel of clean shirts and no gun. Bring him breakfast, Min-jae typed, not a needle. Understood. At 6, the light along the East River began to change. He watched it for the color, not the time. He turned from the window, went to Lila's room, and stood in the doorway. She was on her stomach, with one leg out from under the blanket. The storybook was on the nightstand where he had left it. He closed her door most of the way and went to Nia's. He knocked once. She said come in without asking who. She was in a t-shirt he did not know she owned, and pajama pants that had gone through a lot of Tuesdays. She was sitting up against the headboard with a phone in her lap. You were up, he said. I was up. I am leaving in 20 minutes. I will be back by 9. Okay. He did not move. She watched him not move. Say the thing you came in here to say, she told him. He came to the foot of the bed. He put a hand on the bedpost. When Sung-hoon put me on that floor, I counted 3 ways to die. In the first one, I saw my mother's face. In the second, I saw my father's back, walking away from me, the way he walked away from me when I was 9. In the third, I heard your daughter say the word dragon. She waited. I did not choose the third. The third chose me. What are you telling me? I am telling you that I owe her a life, not one I already had, a different one. And me. To you I do not owe. To you I promise. He watched her hand move on the phone in her lap. She turned it face down on the blanket. Promise what? That when you decide what shape this is between us, I do not decide first. That's a lot to promise from a man with a koi under his collar. It is the only one I know how to keep. She looked at the door for a moment, as if there were somebody in the hallway. There was not. 9 o'clock, she said. 9 o'clock. He left. By 7:40, Cranston was sitting on a metal chair in a warehouse in Long Island City, with a paper cup of coffee in both hands and a plate of eggs he had not touched. He was wearing yesterday's shirt. He had not shaved in 3 days. He looked up when Min-jae came in and stood halfway before Junpyo put a hand on his shoulder and he sat down again. "Doctor," Min-jae said, in English, and pulled a second chair up and sat opposite him. Cranston's eyes moved to the koi at the open collar, and then to the floor. "You knew," Min-jae said. "I knew. You signed. I signed. And then I stopped. Why? Because the man who told me to sign called me by a name my brother used to call me before he died, and I understood who he had bought before me. Kang, you left me your pen. I left you the only thing I had that was mine." Min-jae looked at him for a long time. Cranston's hands were shaking around the paper cup. He was a bad man in small ways, and had been used for a large one. Min-jae had not decided yet which of those two things to weigh first. "Your wife thinks you are dead," Min-jae said. "Yes. You will call her at 10. From a phone we give you. You will tell her you had a breakdown and checked yourself into a facility in Vermont. You will stay there 6 months. When you come out, you will not practice medicine again. You will write a book about hospital administration nobody buys. You will die in your bed at 82 of something ordinary." Cranston nodded once. "If you speak my name to anyone, ever, I will know within an hour, and your daughter's husband will lose the job he just got in San Diego, and the daughter will call you crying, and you will not be able to explain. I will not speak your name. Eat the eggs." Cranston ate the eggs. He ate them slowly, the way a man eats when he has learned in the last 72 hours that a mouth is a small mercy. The fork shook against the plate on the second bite and stopped shaking on the third. He drank the coffee down to the grounds. He set the paper cup upside down on the plate, the way his mother had taught him to set a cup at a diner. He was inside a life again. Min-jae watched him finish and then stood. "One more thing, doctor." Cranston looked up. "The pen stays with me. It was yours the moment I put it in the box." "Good." Min-jae walked to the small table by the wall and picked up an envelope Junpyo had left there. He carried it back and set it in front of Cranston. "The address of the facility in Vermont, the name they will call you, a phone, a schedule, a number for a woman named Han, who will call you every second Thursday to confirm you are still breathing. If she does not reach you, someone will drive up. If you drink, someone will drive up. If you write anything down that has the letter K on the same page as the letter M, someone will drive up. Understood. You will not thank me. I will not. Go." Junpyo took Cranston out through a side door. Min-jae stood alone in the warehouse a moment. The eggs were gone. The paper cup was upside down on the plate. He thought about the plate for longer than the plate deserved. Junpyo walked Min-jae back to the car. The sun was full over the East River now, hard and white. "Alden," Junpyo said. "The donation is drafted. The board meets Friday. The uptown man. Later. I promised 9. Understood." They drove back over the bridge. The city was starting its day the way cities do, without noticing that anything had ended overnight or begun. Min-jae watched a woman on a bicycle carry 2 coffees in one hand and a dog leash in the other, and thought that the world was full of people who had never counted 3 ways to die and did not need to. He was in the elevator at 8:51. He was at the door at 8:53. Lila was awake and standing on a stool at the kitchen island with Marisol, cracking an egg into a bowl with both hands like a small, careful surgeon. She looked up when he came in and said, "You are back." "I am back. Before I wake up." "You are already awake." "I woke up early on purpose." "Why?" "To catch you." He crossed the kitchen and lifted her off the stool and held her against his shoulder for the length of one breath and put her back down. She went back to the egg without a word. Nia was in the doorway to the hall, in a robe with the belt tied twice. She watched him a moment. 9 o'clock, she said. 8:53. I noticed. She walked past him to the coffee. He watched her pour it. He watched her turn with the cup in both hands, the way Cranston had held the paper cup. Only warmer, only slower, only hers. Tomorrow, she said, I want to go to the Bronx. He waited. Not the hospital, not that block. A church on Grand Concourse, where my mother used to sit on Wednesdays. I want to sit where she sat. I will take you. You will not go inside. I will not go inside. You will wait in the car. I will wait in the car. She lifted the cup and drank. Behind them, Lila cracked the second egg with both hands and did not break the yolk this time. She looked up at Min-jae with the yolk trembling on her small palm and said, in careful Korean, the 2 words her tutor had taught her that morning. Aboji, wake. The room went still. Min-jae did not correct her. He did not tell her that the word she meant was different from the word she had used. He knelt down slowly beside the stool until his eyes were level with hers, and he took the yolk from her hand into his own and did not let it break. I hear you, he said, in Korean. Lila nodded, satisfied, and reached for the 3rd egg. Nia set the cup down on the counter without a sound. She looked at Min-jae, and she looked at Lila, and she looked out the tall window at the river the child would grow up beside. She did not speak. She did not need to. The morning kept moving forward, the way mornings do when a house has decided to become a home behind the back of the people living in it, and none of the 3 of them stopped it. Marisol came in with a folded towel over one arm and cleared the broken shells without asking. Nia carried her coffee to the window and stood where Min-jae had stood the night before. From that height, the river looked like something a child had drawn with the side of a crayon, wide and gray and full of small boats going nowhere in particular. She watched them for a while. She let the cup cool in her hand until it was only warm, and then only the memory of warm, and she drank the last of it anyway. Behind her, Min-jae had already gone back to the study, quietly, without a word, the way a man goes back to work when the work is the shape of a promise. She heard the door close. She did not turn around. The elevator hummed once and went still. Nia stayed at the window with the cup gone cool in her hand. Below her, the river was doing its slow work, dragging light in one direction whether anyone watched or not. She listened for the small sounds a house makes when a man walks out of it, and she counted them the way she used to count vitals, steady, patient, unimpressed. The door click at the private landing, the soft engagement of the town car below, the way Marisol lowered a pan into the sink without letting the metal touch metal. Lila slid off the kitchen stool with an eggshell cupped between her palms like a small treasure. She carried it to Nia and held it up. For the birds, Lila said. You want to keep it for the birds. On the ledge, Aboji said. Aboji again. It landed differently this time. Nia set the cup down. She took the shell, held it a beat, and put it on the sill where the pigeons would find it before the sun got tall. Then we let it wait for them, she said. Lila leaned into her hip. Are you sad? No, my life. Your face said. My face is tired. That is a different word. Lila accepted the correction, the way she accepted most things, as one more line in a book she had decided to read all the way through. She went back to the counter and asked Marisol how to fold a napkin into a swan. Marisol, who had folded napkins into swans since she was 14 at a wedding hall in Ponce, made 2, one for Lila, one for Nia. She set the second next to the cooling cup without a word. Nia watched the small paper wings and understood, for the first time since walking through the private door, that this was not a hotel and she was not a guest. Somebody had made a swan for her. That was a decision. She would have to make her own before the day was out. She looked at the storybook on the counter. Creased spine, corners softened, the koi mid-leap on the cover, and thought about the woman on Fordham Road who had sold it to her for $2 because the little girl had touched it and would not put it down. She thought about the eviction letter that had lived in the seam of the lunch bag for 2 nights. She thought about the shift she had walked into with $11 and a stub the color of a bad Valentine. All of it had brought her here, to a room with more glass than wall, holding a paper swan. Marisol asked, gently, about breakfast for the little one. Nia said oatmeal, brown sugar if they had it. They had it. She went to change. Uptown, the man who had once answered Kang Do-yoon's calls opened his refrigerator to find that the milk had turned overnight. That was the first sign. The second was the parking attendant at his garage, who did not look up when he passed, though the attendant had looked up every morning for 2 years. The third was the elevator, which he shared with a courier in a plain gray jacket who got out on his floor and turned the wrong way, and then, deciding, turned the right way. The man in the apartment closed his door and did not lock it, because a lock would have insulted the visitor. He sat on the arm of the couch and waited. Park Jung-pyo came in first with 2 coffees. He set one down. The man did not touch it. Chae came in second, coat still on his shoulders, and sat across the low table without unbuttoning. You knew, Min-jae said. Not a question. Since Tuesday. You did not run. Where would I have gone, Hyungnim? Min-jae studied him a long moment. There was no cruelty in the look, and no forgiveness either. Only the sorting a man does when he is deciding what a life is worth to keep. You dialed the number that ended in a suppressor at my forehead. I dialed the numbers I was told to dial. That is the sentence every man in your seat says. Then it is also the true one sometimes. Jun-pyo, at the window, did not move his shoulders. The man on the couch arm folded his hands the way old altar boys fold them, thumb over thumb. Names, Min-jae said. The man gave 9. 2 Min-jae already had. 4 he had suspected. 3 were new. Jun-pyo wrote none of them down. He was the kind of man whose memory did not need paper. The woman who took his calls at night, Min-jae said. The one in Fort Lee. His cousin. She kept a second phone in a bread box. Bread box. Ceramic. Rooster on the lid. Min-jae almost smiled. He did not let it reach the corner. He stood and buttoned the coat. You will leave the city today, he said. You will go to the address Jun-pyo puts in your coat pocket on the way out. You will call the woman named Han every second Thursday. You will not touch a phone that belongs to anyone in this world again. If you do, the visit that ends this conversation ends the next one instead. Yes, Hyungnim. Drink the coffee. It cost more than your rent. The man drank the coffee. His hand shook only on the last swallow. Jun-pyo laid an envelope on the couch cushion, and they went. In the car going south, Min-jae did not speak for a while. He watched the West Side Highway turn under the wheels, the river flat and gray, gulls doing their sideways business over the water. Jun-pyo waited until they crossed 57th before he spoke. The bread box. Fort Lee tonight, Min-jae said. Alone. You. No one else. No noise. The cousin walks into her own kitchen tomorrow, and the box is empty, and that is the whole message. Understood. They passed the pier where a fisherman was pretending to fish. Min-jae watched him and thought about how many kinds of pretending a city held at any given hour. How much of the machinery of a life was people not looking directly at the thing in front of them. He had been that thing for 11 weeks. He had learned the ceiling tiles of room 417 by count and by grain. He had learned which nurse held a wrist as if it were her own child's wrist, and which held it as if it were a door handle. He had learned, in the end, whose voice pulled a body back through a wall it had already been fitted for. He owed a debt that could not be repaid in envelopes. He put the debt in his coat pocket next to the fountain pen with the gold clip and let the car take him home. Lila had put the swan on the coffee table by the window when he came in. She held up the second one, Nia's, and said, "This one is for Mama, but she said I can hold it until she comes back." "Comes back from where?" "Her room. She is putting on the church dress. Tomorrow is the day." "Tomorrow," he said, and knelt. "Then today, what is our job?" "You said we would eat the noodle with the black sauce." "I did say that." "And walk on the bridge." "Which bridge?" "The one with the wood." "Brooklyn." "Yes." He put his hand on top of the puff without pressing. She let him. He stood. Nia came out of the hall in a dress the color of the river, when the light was low on it, dark and moving. Not a church dress. A dress for a woman who was not going to church today. She had put small gold hoops in her ears. Not the studs she wore under scrubs, hoops that caught light. And she had taken the ring off her right hand and put it in the small pocket sewn inside her sleeve. She did not know that he saw her do it in the reflection of the darkened television. He saw. He did not name it. "You said noodles," she said. "The three of us. If you will come." "I will come." They went. Marisol brought Lila's coat and asked if she should hold the storybook. Lila said no. She would carry it. She always did. The noodle shop was in a basement on 32nd with a hand-painted sign in 3 alphabets, and the woman who ran it had known Min Jae since he was a soldier with soft shoes. She did not look surprised to see him walking in with a black woman and a small girl in a butter-yellow dress. She looked, if anything, as if she had been waiting. She sat them at the corner booth, brought barley tea in 3 sizes, and put down 2 orders of jjajangmyeon without being asked, and 1 small bowl of plain noodles with sesame oil for the child. Lila lifted a single noodle with her chopsticks and held it up to the light like a wire. She said, "Aboji, this one is longer than my arm. Longer than your arm now. Not longer than your arm at 10. At 10, I will be tall." "Yes." Nia stirred the black sauce into her noodles slowly, the way her mother had stirred grits, from the outside in. She said, without looking at him, "Tell me what today was." "A man who dialed a phone. He will leave the city. That is all." "That is all today. And tomorrow." "Fort Lee, a bread box." "You are telling me things you did not tell me before." "You asked." "I did." She lifted a noodle. She ate it. She set the chopsticks down. "I want the church," she said, "but not the church my mother went to. That one belongs to her. I want to sit on the steps outside the one on Featherbed Lane, where they let you sit, even if you did not come to the service. My grandmother used to sit there on Saturdays. Then we sit on the steps. And Lila stays with Marisol, if you like." "I do." He put his palm on the table, halfway between them, and left it there. She looked at the palm. She did not put her hand on it, and she did not move hers away. She put her cup next to it, barley tea between 2 hands. "I asked you last night," he said, "to tell me what shape this is." "You did." "I meant it." "I know. You do not have to answer at the noodles." "I know that too." Lila slurped, loudly and gracefully, and both of them looked at her at the same time, and the look they exchanged over the child's small dark head, surprised into softness, was the closest thing to an answer either of them had spoken all day. They walked the bridge afterward, Lila between them, 1 small hand in each. The wooden planks made the sound wooden planks make when a city has walked on them for 140 years. A cyclist swerved and did not curse. A tourist took a picture of the cables and not of them, which was the way Min Jae preferred all pictures of himself. Halfway across, Lila stopped and put her cheek against the rail. "Mama." "Yes, my life." "The koi in the book. He got to the top." "He did." "Then what?" Nia looked at Min Jae before she answered. He did not help her. He had learned, in the room where he could not speak, that answers borrowed from other people were the ones that came apart first. Then he was a dragon, Nia said, but he was still a fish inside. He remembered the water. He did not forget. He did not forget. Layla accepted this and walked on. At the far side, Min-jae bought a paper cone of roasted chestnuts from a vendor who had been on that corner longer than the vendor had been alive, and the three of them ate them shell-warm on a bench facing back at the city. The chestnuts were burnt on one side, the way street chestnuts always were. Lila liked the burnt side. Nia liked the sweet center. Min-jae ate the ones with the split shells, because they were the easiest to open with one hand. He was watching the water when Nia spoke. You said last night I would decide. Yes. I am not going to decide today either. All right. But I want you to know two things now. Yes. 1. I am not going back to that hospital. Not to work, not to visit. That building is a door I closed, and I am not the woman who reopens closed doors. Understood. 2. My child is going to grow up in rooms where the doors have locks that belong to us. Not to a leasing office, not to a supervisor, not to a payer with 6 letters and a dash. Ours. Yes, whatever shape this becomes, friends, family, something with a word I do not have yet, those two things are the floor. They are the floor. Say it back. Your child grows in rooms with our locks. You never go back to that building. Those are the floor. Anything I build sits on top of them. Yes. She put a chestnut in his palm. He ate it. She did not look at him while he ate it. She looked at the tug moving under the bridge, and the small movement of her shoulder against his in the wind was the movement of a woman who had chosen where to place her weight and was not going to move it again for a while. They walked back the way they had come. Lila carried the empty cone as if it were a torch until she got tired of it and gave it to him, and he folded it and put it in his coat pocket next to the pen with the gold clip. That night, Fort Lee. Junpyo went alone in a delivery uniform with the name of a company that had gone out of business in Bergen County the year before. The building had a courtyard with a fig tree that had never fruited. The cousin, a woman in her 50s with a good gold cross and a bad temper, was at her sister's playing cards. The kitchen was clean. The rooster on the ceramic lid was chipped on one wing. Junpyo lifted the lid, took the phone that was inside, put a small folded paper crane in its place, and put the lid back down. He walked out through the courtyard and past the fig that had never fruited and got into a plain sedan and drove south without turning on the radio. In Manhattan, Min-jae read Lila the page after the koi got to the top. She corrected his English again. The water was still cold, a boji, not was cold still, and he thanked her in Korean, and she said, "We come," the way American children say welcome, and he did not correct her either. He shut the book. He sat with it on his knees. Nia was in the doorway of the child's room in a robe again, watching. He did not turn to her. He said, into the quiet, "The pen goes in a box tomorrow. The box goes in a drawer. The drawer stays closed. Cranston. Cranston is where I said he would be. The pen is not for him. It is for what he did not sign. You are going to keep it. I am going to keep it where a man keeps the thing that reminds him what he owes to a signature that did not come. That is a long sentence for you. It is." He closed the door softly. He turned in the hallway and stood in front of her a moment, without touching her. He said, in the voice Martha Rose knew from 100 lobby goodnights, the voice a man uses when the hour is late and the day has been carried by more than one pair of hands. "Sleep, please. You too. Soon." He went to the study. The city on the other side of the glass was doing what cities do at that hour, turning down its own volume, one window at a time. He stood at the desk and did not sit. He opened the small box on the corner of the blotter and put the pen inside and closed the box. He opened the drawer and put the box inside and closed the drawer. He did not lock it. Locks were for rooms that belonged to other people. He stood there a long minute. Then he crossed the hall and stopped outside the door of the guest room where the laundromat bag had been set down and never opened, and he put his palm on the door for the space of one breath, a hand on a door that held a life he had not lived, and he took his palm away and went to bed. Somewhere below the window, the tug that had passed under the bridge that afternoon was tying up at a pier in Red Hook. The man on its deck did not know he had been watched by 3 people eating chestnuts. The city did not know a bread box in Fort Lee had 1 fewer phone in it than it had had at dinner. Lila did not know that a paper crane the size of her thumb had replaced a machine that had once been used to plan her mother's death. Nia knew and did not know and slept anyway because the floor had been named and the floor was hers. Martha Rose would have said, later, of nights like this, but she was not narrating from the room. She was watching from the far side of a life she had already lived, holding her tongue the way concierges hold tongues. What was said in the apartment was said. What was done in New Jersey was done. What was decided on a wooden bridge over cold water was decided. And in room 417 of the Bronx General, on the 4th floor of a wing that no one called the Ghost Wing anymore, because the woman who had called it that no longer worked there, a temp nurse walked past a bed that was freshly stripped and remade for no one, and did not notice the small piece of butter-yellow ribbon caught in the wheel of the bracket beneath it. It stayed there another 3 weeks before a janitor found it. He put it in his pocket. He took it home. He did not know why. He gave it to his daughter, who tied it around the wrist of a doll. The koi kept swimming. The dragon kept remembering the water. The city breathed once, and then again, and then went on. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever cared for someone the world had already written off, my loves? Have you ever recognized a dangerous man and chosen to treat him like a human being anyway? Mark my words, the smallest voice in the room, a child reading a bedtime story, can wake up what medicine gave up on. Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about dignity, awakening, and loyalty, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.